ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
G'day ABC News Daily listeners. I'm not Sam, I'm Matt Bevan. I want to tell you about my new series, America's Last Election, on my podcast, If You're Listening.
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
I'm looking back at the denial of the 2020 election result and what it tells us about the plan this year.
We have to win so that it's too big to rig.
You can find it on ABC Listen.
This extraordinary campaign began as a rematch until Joe Biden's shocking debate performance.
What was clear today is that his near assassination has only increased his mystique and appeal with his most fervent supporters.
Misinformation and conspiracy theories are swirling about election fraud.
It's hard to exaggerate just how much Kamala Harris's ascent to the top of the party ticket has completely reshaped this race.
You're hearing there from our US correspondents, Barbara Miller and Carrington Clarke, who are now in the key swing state of Pennsylvania. With just hours until America starts to vote, the last opinion polls are coming in. So could there still be a landslide victory for one side or the other? Today, Barb and Carrington on the role of women voters and why some Americans are still certain life will be better under Trump. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Barb and Carrington, oh my, what a time to be there. Barb, first of all, just tell me exactly where you are because you're on the road.
Not in a very glamorous location. I am on the road between Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, where Kamala Harris will hold her final night rally in Pennsylvania, as you know, a key swing state, and we haven't quite made it there, so we've stopped at a service station. I've got a coffee in hand here, so things are pretty good, really.
And Carrington, what about you? Where are you right now?
Yeah, so I'm currently in Lidditz in rural Pennsylvania. It is very ruby red Trump country. He needs his supporters to come out in force if he's going to have any shot of winning this crucial swing state. Both candidates are saying this is the most important election in your lifetime. Now, we've heard that before in other elections, but it does ring true, I think, for a lot of people. These are vastly different worldviews that are being offered by the Democratic and Republican parties, and people know that who controls the White House will control a large part of the direction that America follows over the next 4 years.
And to become the president, you really do need to win Pennsylvania, which is why I gather you're both there. At this point, Barb, the door knocking is seriously intense and you've been going along to some of it. Tell me about Jack Dingus.
Yeah, Jack Dingus is a man we met here in Pennsylvania a few days ago. That was in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. So Jack Dingus came down from Manhattan. He's an art handler, and he says he's never done anything like this before. He's never done any canvassing, but he just felt that this was so important. He was very scathing about Donald Trump.
This is the most bewildering thing I think I've ever experienced in my life. I don't know how you can look at this man and not think he's an idiot. If you're any judge of character, how can you do that?
Tell me if you think you've made a difference with this work you've done.
I'm happy right now doing this. I have purpose. And if I garnered one vote, I don't care. That's worth it to me.
And I've talked to quite a few people like that. They go and they might even do just one day of door knocking. They want to feel that they have in some way contributed, volunteered, tried to support the party that they so desperately hope will win, to home in on their supporters and try and get them out to vote.
And Carrington, as you mentioned, you went to a Trump rally. His behaviour, his language, it's sexist, it's violent, and quite frankly, it's often bizarre. What do the people that you meet say about that, about his behaviour?
I would say there's kind of two broad categories of responses. Some Trump supporters basically say they just wish he wasn't as rude as he is, but they fundamentally agree with his policies. They believe he is good for the country. But then there's also this other group, and I experienced this particularly among younger men, and they're one of the interesting kind of subplots to this story. Young, particularly white men, seem to be drawn to Donald Trump in a way they haven't been drawn to Republican candidates in the past. Young people generally go for the Democrats. They see themselves as more liberal. But it appears in some of the polling that while young women are very securely in the Democratic supporter category, young men are drawn to Donald Trump. And I think a lot of these young men, when they hear the way Donald Trump speak, it actually resonates with them. They see him as speaking his name, that he's kind of standing up against what's now termed wokeness, used to be described as political correctness. And I think there is a difficulty when covering Donald Trump, which I actually experienced today, where sometimes the type of language he uses, it's hard to unpick when he's joking and when he's being serious.
To get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much, because I don't mind.
Because he is not a normal politician, it just doesn't play by the usual rules. People project onto his words and his behaviours whatever they want them to be.
Yeah. All right, Barb, what do you think? Obviously, the Harris campaign really needs the vote of women, and Trump's language really helps them, I suppose, gain that, along with, of course, his stance on abortion. A really interesting tactic I've noticed is that the Democrats are really telling women, go and vote. That's a private matter. You don't have to tell anyone how you voted. Just tell me about that. There's even an ad out from Julia Roberts, advocating that.
Did you make the right choice?
Sure did, honey.
Remember, what happens in the booth stays in the booth.
Yeah, they're really leaning into the hope that some women whose husbands are leaning towards Trump may, because of the reproductive rights issue, want to vote for Kamala Harris but not be able to say that. There's even a campaign, a seemingly grassroots campaign, where people are putting up little Post-its in women's bathrooms saying, it's okay, your vote is private. So yeah, we've really seen this in the final couple of weeks of the campaign, this message that you can, split from your partner, your husband. I think what it does highlight is how strong the Democrats believe this issue of abortion and reproductive rights is for them. And they're really trying to get out every single last vote they can by even saying, look, just don't tell anyone about it, but you can still vote for us.
Yeah. And Carrington, you've also seen a split within families where some members are, real Trump supporters, but others just can't go there this time.
Yeah, it is fascinating watching this up close. And one of the interesting characteristics of the political system here in America is how people wear their political identity on their sleeves in a way that would be foreign, I think, to most Australians. But I did meet this interesting gentleman, Michael Longoria, at a Kamala Harris rally actually in Nevada. Now, he was visiting Nevada. He actually lives in Oklahoma, and he described himself as a Mexican-American. Then I asked him about the issue of immigration and whether or not Donald Trump's rhetoric on this issue was off-putting to him. And he said, well, actually, he's found that within his family, there is a variety of views. Half of his family actually supports Donald Trump's hardline view on migration, and they believe that the border should be secured and that illegal migrants should be deported.
So I come from a family divided. I have family members that do support Trump and those of us who do not. So I see that it's a galvanizing conversation in our household. Just because we are second generation born in this country. It's just they agree with a lot of things that Trump says about immigration. And had somebody not immigrated to this country illegally, we wouldn't be here.
As our correspondents on the ground, of course, you're our eyes and ears. Just tell me, it's so hard for us, I guess, as a nation to understand how there can be such different visions of what a future should be it's so polarised in America. Why do you think that is? What's led to that? You've been there for quite a few years now.
I mean, why it's become so polarised, I guess we would have to say that Donald Trump has been a factor in that. I mean, he's been around now as a major political figure for 8-9 years, and he's really, taken an iron grip on the party. He's got this very loyal following. He's managed to speak to a whole section of Americans who apparently felt that they were being overlooked or that they weren't being respected. And as we saw after 2020, he was able to fire them up and to incite violence. So I think that's a big part of it. I think also the Democrats have leaned in to saying that Donald Trump will be a catastrophe for the nation, that, its systems will be threatened. And certainly when you hear him talking about mass deportation and exacting revenge on those who have wronged him, he certainly could wreak chaos. So even, there was always division, but it was more polite, I guess, more respectful. But we have the Trump factor, and then we also have the Democrats telling their supporters, it is this bad, it's going to be terrible.
Carrington, you live there. What's the inequality in America like? Is it so pronounced you can see it?
Absolutely. America is a country of extremes. There is huge amounts of wealth, innovation, entrepreneurship in America, and there are huge pockets of absolute disadvantage. And I think when we try to understand the rise of Donald Trump over the past 9 years and why it is that he's still around, is that he seems to have tapped into this discontent in a way that other politicians have not been able to. And that is quite hard to understand, I think, from further away, that this person who grew up with such immense wealth, this billionaire who lives this flamboyant lifestyle, seems to have become the champion for some of the most disadvantaged people in America. There is at least a good percentage of Americans who do believe that he sees them, that they do believe that the system has been corrupted, that the table isn't fair, and that Donald Trump promises to basically flip that over. And so that's quite extraordinary to witness up close.
All right. Well, Carrington, we know the polls show it is too close to call, that there's no candidate with a definitive lead in any of the swing states. But there has been this polling in Iowa. Just tell me about that, because that's fascinating and pretty good news for Kamala Harris at this point.
Yeah, this was a shocking poll number. So Iowa was not considered to be in play in this particular election. We've basically got it down to these 7 key swing states. But this poll in Iowa by a very well-respected pollster who has decades of experience and expertise came out and suggested that Kamala Harris was ahead of Donald Trump within the margin of error, but still ahead in a state which they did not think the Democrats were even competitive in. What is more important than perhaps that headline figure is looking at where the support for Kamala Harris is coming from, how strong she's doing with white women in particular, and what that might mean if that was repeated across the country. And I think one of the concerns I have at the moment is because we are so focused on these 7 key swing states and have been for years now, that perhaps some of these other states that we don't think are in play, maybe they are.
Yeah.
And the resources haven't been deployed. So although the polls look so tight, a dead heat across the board, that perhaps there might be a surprise on Tuesday,
yes,
or in the days following Tuesday, and another state that we don't think is on the potentially in play becomes in play.
Absolutely. All right. Okay, Barb, I'm going to give you the last word. It's a bit of a tough one. Could America really return, tell me, Donald Trump to the presidency, the man who rejected the last election? He revved up his supporters to storm the US Capitol. He's a convicted criminal who's about to be sentenced in a hush money case later this month. Really, will Americans vote him in again? And what does that mean for America?
I think they could very well vote him in again. And I think that the reason that is possible is the border and the economy. Those are two issues that are really resonating with voters. And people are worried. And in difficult times, people will be worried about incomers. And I think that he harnesses those fears of people coming in who might take jobs, who he's suggesting that migrants with no evidence are committing more crimes, raping women, killing young girls. And that is resonating, this idea that the country is somehow overrun with these illegal migrants is something that is front of mind for a lot of people. And the economy, things are very, very expensive here. Inflation is under control, but prices didn't come back down. And people seem to remember this time when it was better under Donald Trump. So I think, I don't know who's going to win. I mean, these polls do suggest it's on a knife edge. It's going to be absolutely fascinating here in Pennsylvania. You drive down one street and you think, oh, there's a lot of Trump signs here. Then you turn the corner, there's a lot of Harris signs, or on either side of the road. It feels like both camps are doing very well on all the time. So I don't know who will win, but yes, I do think it's entirely possible. And that is astounding given how a couple of years ago it seemed that he was spent, that the people were done with Donald Trump and that they were done with the chaos.
All right. And Carrington, you don't know who's going to win either, and I'm guessing that you don't want to have a guess at this point.
Go on, Carrington.
One thing I do think is potentially fascinating, if Donald Trump does not win, I think it's clear that the abortion issue is a big part of the reason that the Democrats will have won. I think what he claims as one of his greatest achievements in the presidency, which was the appointment of 3 Supreme Court judges who then overturned Roe v. Wade, will become the thing that cost him a second term in office.
All right. Well, Barb and Carrington, thank you so much, and good luck in the days ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Barbara Miller and Carrington Clarke are the ABC's North America correspondents. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed and Sam Dunn. Audio production by Anna John. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Join me tomorrow morning for your briefing on how to make sense of Election Day in the United States, followed by an extra episode in the evening updating you on the vote count. Thanks for listening.